Welcome everyone. In this lecture, we are going to learn how numbers works in Python. Okay, Python has various types of numbers. It means numerical literals. It has various numerical literals, but we mainly focusing on integer and floating point numbers. Okay, in integer and floating point numbers are majorly work in every programming languages. So, in previous lecture, we learned about what is integer data type and floating point data types. In this lecture, just we will go through the basics and how arithmetic operations and some basic operation how we can perform with using integer or floating point numbers. Okay, integers. Integers are just a whole number. It's a whole number. Integer. There might be positive number or it can be negative number. For example, there you can see, right, minus 3 is a positive integer and minus 3 is a negative integer. Okay, like that. Floating point numbers, if any number contains decimal points, that we will call floating point numbers. And if we use an exponential to define a number, that is also we call, in programming language, it is floating point numbers. For example, for floating decimal point numbers, 3.0 or minus negative, it can be positive floating point numbers and negative floating point numbers. Example for exponential numbers, 4 E3 means 4 times 10 to the power of 3. It's also example for floating point numbers in Python. For more examples, there you can see 1.2 and minus 0.5 or 2e2 or 2 exponential 2 or 3 exponential 2. Next, we will just will perform our basic arithmetic operations using integer and floating point numbers. Okay, we have some basic arithmetic operations, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We will go through one by one. Okay. Now I'm doing integer to integer addition, and we can perform integer to floating point addition or floating point to floating point addition. So we will get into that. Okay. First, I'll add integer two integer values. There you can see, right? 3 plus 3. This is integer 6. If suppose I am going to add floating point numbers, two floating point numbers, 5.4 plus 7.3, we will get floating point data types. Okay, like that we can add an integer with floating point number also. There you can see it, 5 is a integer number and 7.3 is the floating point numbers. I'm going to add that. So final result is floating point numbers. Python automatically handles the data types. Final result is going to be floating point numbers. Like that, we can perform subtraction also. We can perform integer negative integer subtraction or floating point subtraction, and we can use both integer and floating point subtractions. For example, now I'm going to do integer subtractions. 5 minus 2, 5. And we will get the result as 3. There you can see, right? We'll see the result 3. Like that, we can perform on floating point subtractions also, like 8.23 minus 8.9.3. It can be negative floating point number. There you can see, right? 1.0 as a result as 1.3 minus 1.0. It is floating point numbers. Like that, subtraction floating point number with integer number. We'll see that example. Minus 5. You can see, right? 8.3 is a floating point number. 5 is negative numbers. Let me execute that. It produces a floating point 3.000 something. So as I already know, Python interpreter automatically handles their data types, and finally it will produce the floating point floating point results. Like that, we can perform multiplication integer to integer. For example, integer to float or float with float. Integer with floating point numbers. Okay. 4 multiplication 2, it will produce integer output. There you can see, right, 8. Like that, I can perform integer with floating point multiplication, floating point number. Uh, Let me execute that. See, the output result is floating point number 9.2. So we can perform floating point multiplications also, floating point numbers multiplications also, like 4.4 into 2.3. That 10.12 is the result. Division also we can use both as integers, and we can use mix with the integer and floating point numbers. Either we can use a floating point with the integer, but our final result would be floating point data types. Okay, for example, 4 divided by 2. I'm using 4 and 2 as integer numbers. I'm going to run that code. The output produced as a floating point numbers. Division, it automatically Python interpreter automatically gives us a floating point numbers. 4.2 divided by integer number 2. So it will produce 2.2 floating point numbers. Hope you understand how numbers works in Python. See you in the next lecture.